Welcome back to another episode of The Blueprint. I'm your host, Calvin Custance. For the first time ever, this week's guest is a coach. Today we welcome Coach Brandon Gennette, the Varsity Head Coach of the Cousino Patriots football team. It was his first year as the head coach, and he completely turned around the Cousino program in 1 year. They're coming off a 6-4 season with a playoff appearance. So today we got Coach Brandon Gennette. He's the head football coach at Cousino, an impressive turnaround that you guys had this year. 6-3 or 6-4 with the playoff. Well, she played Roseville, like a good Roseville team in the first round of the playoffs. So, but how many? I think was there 3 combined wins in the last 3 years for Cousino, and you come in and you guys go 6-3 in the regular season.
They were 1-27 in their last 28 games before this year.
Wow, I stand corrected. That is even more impressive turnaround.
Yeah, so.
All right,
it's fun, man. A lot of fun.
That's awesome. So we're kind of dig into your past. So when did you start coaching?
In 2013, I was at CMU going to college, and I had to get in a double minor so that I would graduate. So I went and got an athletic coaching minor. And while I was doing that, they told me that I needed to do an internship. So I called down to Ithaca High School, about 20 miles down the road. They were in the middle of an incredible run. So I met with their head coach, and then he offered me a volunteer spot to do quarterbacks with that group. So in 2013, I was the quarterback coach at Ithaca High School and won the state championship.
That's awesome. So is that something that a lot of people can expect from either just taking that minor or just being at Central, just a lot of internship opportunities for coaching?
For my program, it was, being a head coach, you can never turn away good help. And we all know that younger guys trying to get in the profession are important. And so I think I can speak for most head coaches when they say, when young guys eager to come around and just learn, we really want them around. So I think the athletic coaching minor, just in itself, having to get the internship, will really open up a lot of things for you. I think it interests the head coach to hear that you're going to school for those things. And then again, as a volunteer, they kind of know you're not expecting any compensation. So it's someone that's coming around. We're helping you. We're kind of molding the younger group. And I say that as a 31-year-old. So it's kind of funny for me to say the younger group. But the next crop of coaches, it's always nice to be able to give back to those guys.
So kind of jumping into the coaching thing in college, what were your responsibilities as a quarterback coach?
So really, I just worked one-on-one with our 2 quarterbacks we had. One was actually a starting slot receiver for us as a sophomore, and then his older brother was our starting quarterback. So during special teams time, I would take our quarterback, Travis. We do some footwork stuff. And then from there, I was just behind the quarterback during offensive practice, and any questions he had, he would come to me about. And it was more specific to the quarterback position. At that time, I wasn't doing so much scheme. I didn't have a big part in the overall scheme or game plans. I was just kind of there learning. But I could pass my knowledge to Travis, who eventually went on to enroll at Wake Forest as a quarterback. So it was cool. Him and I have talked about it quite a bit, about that time that we had together. And he always tells me how much he appreciated having a quarterback coach that would talk to him about defensive structures, what to look for, and just advice after, playing the position a couple years prior.
Is there any coaches that you've had along the way, either in your back in your playing days or just picked up that's helped you with coaching? And you said you ended up going to Wake Forest. What were some of the drills or kind of circuits that you ran with him to try to make him better?
A lot of it I took from my quarterback coach when I was in high school, who actually is coaching with me at Cousino right now. So he studied the position a lot. And, when I had him as I was a sophomore at East Detroit when I was working with him. So I remember a lot of the footwork drills we did, a lot of throwing drills. One thing about Travis that everyone tried to knock was his arm strength. So I tried to find some things that I could help with that. But, nowadays you can find so many resources on Twitter from other coaches. That's the one thing that I've seen grow the most. Is just the coaching community. The football coaching community is incredible. I've never reached out to a coach that has told me no when I've asked for resources, and that's from guys that I've never met. That's guys from international that are coaching football to the guys that are down the street that we will see, in the summer working with. It's one of the nice things is anything that I want to know or that I see that piques my interest. I just reach out to those guys, and 9 times out of 10, they are more than willing to give me everything that they have.
Mm-hmm. So, is this the first head coach job that you've had?
For football, yeah. In college, I was the girls' club basketball head coach. I was a middle school head basketball coach, but this is my first football head coaching job.
That's cool. So, where did you play high school football, and also what position did you play?
I played quarterback. I played at East Detroit my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, and then I actually transferred to Parkway Christian, where I finished my senior year.
Oh, I went there for like elementary and middle school.
Very nice.
That's funny, but yeah, so that's cool. And then, so like, why did you get into coaching? Like, what made you get into coaching football specifically?
I always felt like football was the game that you could. I've always been competitive. I can't get rid of the competitive nature. And I always felt like football is the game that I could still compete against the person on the sideline, by calling plays, developing scheme, developing game plans. That little bit of ego in myself and the competitiveness, doesn't go away. I actually started my first coaching job as a baseball coach, and with my dad, who was my coach, and we kind of took a little Fed ball team over at about 12 years old. They were 12, and I would sit there and be like, "Dad, I'm bored. Like this isn't for me. It's just not enough for me to keep me engaged." So
Mhm.
I loved football. Football is my favorite sport when I played, and so when I saw, you keep those mental competitiveness with the guy across from you, and put your kids in the best position to succeed. And when you see it happen, it kind of it helps those competitive juices that you get.
Mhm. What would you say is the hardest thing about coaching that you've found so far?
Man, there's a lot. Probably, when you encounter so many different people from so many different walks of life, and you will encounter so many people who have an upbringing or have a home life that you'll never understand. And so, trying to understand that and get through to that person or that kid, um, that is challenging. Because you don't know why they may come to practice upset every day. You don't know why they may come to practice late every day. You don't know if they're eating. For instance, I had a situation where I coached previously. Um, we had a running back who was almost all state as a junior, and he lost 20 pounds going into his senior year, not good weight. And come to find out, there's some family issues, and he's working to just feed himself. So trying to understand all of those things and still get the most out of the kids without sacrificing your culture and your standards can be really tough.
Mhm. And then, what exactly would you say motivates you? Because obviously, like you've had great success. So coming off a season like this, what motivates you to keep that success going and building upon that going into the next season?
I got big goals, man. I think the best thing that happened to me and the worst thing that ever happened to me was coaching at Ford Field and winning a state championship. That especially my first year, you get kind of spoiled, and you never lose that feeling of being out there, being on the turf, seeing the big screen, you know, being down on that field. So, I don't know that I will be very happy with my success, but I will be driven to go back to that place and win another one. And then, competitively, when you win one, you want to win two, and then you want to win three, and then you start to think about Can you be one of those Hall of Fame guys? Can you be one of the Al Fracasas, the Dan Roans, those guys with multiple championships who are so highly respected at the top of the profession. So step by step, you look at what's a success for each step, and I think this year was successful, but I think next year, we got to raise that bar a little bit and get to the next step on that ladder, and then find what will be successful for us next year.
Mm-hmm. So going into this off season and kind of counting last off season as your first off season as the coach, what are some of the off season routines or practices that you guys do to get ready for the season?
Lift, 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 lift. We'll be in the weight room the week after Thanksgiving break. We will start. We're gonna reshape our weightlifting program a little bit this year. I looked back at last year and I didn't love how we approached it. I thought it was necessary for the situation we were in, but each year is a different situation. So we're gonna really look at lifting for those few months. A lot of recovery from Thanksgiving to about Christmas break. We want to recover our kids' muscles, a lot of their injuries. And then, after we get back from Christmas break, we'll really get into our actual lifting, strengthening. Um, every 2 weeks, the last lift of the week, we will add some type of competition. So we'll do mat drills, we'll do weight relay races. We do something for competition, just so that our kids know that you got to compete. And then after the first of the year, we will also begin our 4-player position group workouts. So I've talked to all my position coaches this year and told them, we really need to focus on fundamentals and getting better across the board at that. So it'll be a busy off season for our kids. We're going to start something called football school in February, where Saturday mornings we're going to bring the guys in who want to come in and just learn about football, sit them down on a board, and bring our quarterback in and let him learn about defenses, coverages. So the more that they can learn and develop that football IQ, the better football players are going to be for us.
Mm-hmm. What offensive formations do you guys run?
So we're in a lot of spread, a lot of 10 personnel, a lot of 20 personnel. We'll add an H-back or a fullback nowadays, or the modern fullback to our formation. We want to be powered downhill running game, quick passing game. My philosophy is the faster you can get going straight forward with your playmakers having the ball, the better off you're going to be. So we try to do what we can to get those guys moving downhill and get the playmakers the ball as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. So can you give me a quick run through on what a normal in-season practice plan looks like how that looks for your team?
So we'll go with an offensive day. So we start practice. We do pre-practice from 3:30 to 3:45. The kids, by the end of the season, knew what we were looking for pre-practice. So that's when we go out there. We'll do pat and goes. We'll do routes on air. Linemen will kind of get some one-on-one work, or they'll kind of walk through some of the defense they're looking for. So that's about a 20 to 25-minute session for them. Then at 3:45, we stretch and warm up for about 10 minutes. From there, we will do a 30-minute session of team defense only. And then from there, we'll switch to a 15-minute special teams period. After special teams, we will go to a 15-minute indie period for offense. And then after indie, we go to inside run, 7-on-7. Our offensive line take an extra 15 minutes of individual, or if they need to do run game on air, walk through for game plan stuff. So they're doing that while we're doing 7-on-7. After those 15 minutes, quarterbacks, running backs run down to do inside run for 15 minutes, and then our wide receivers will do extra indie. And then after that, we go into our team session for 25 minutes, and then we do a goal line period for 10 minutes.
What is the best way that you found to like motivate your kids? Because I know from experience that after like a long like day of hard work that it's sometimes hard to motivate myself. So what's something that you do as a coaching staff that helps motivate the kids and get them ready for the game on Friday?
Um, you just talk about their goals, right? It's you got to trust the kids need to trust the coaches that they know how to get them to where they want to be. And I think that's one thing our kids did a great job of this year is trusting us. So, you just continue to tell them what's in front of them for the short term and the long term. I remember talking to our kids one game, and I said, or one practice, it didn't go great, and I said, look, guys, you're the ones that want you guys did what you did because you want to have a successful season. You want to win more football games. So if you practice like this, that's not going to happen Friday. You're not going to win. If you refocus, turn around and win, not only do you win this week, but it sets you in a position to where you can now realistically start to think about the playoffs. So you kind of motivate them with the short-term goal and the long-term goal, and you kind of got to paint that picture for them, right? Especially my kids at Cousino, they didn't know what it was like to be a part of the playoffs. They didn't know what a playoff atmosphere is like. So painting that picture for them of what it's like to be in a playoff atmosphere, explaining to them that in this area, less than half of the teams will still be playing. So you're going to get a crowd of other schools that are going to be there to watch you play. So you just continue to paint that picture. You give them that vision because it's easy to say, "Hey, we win, we're going to the playoffs," right? But what does that mean? If your kids have never been there, they don't know what that means. So you have to really paint that picture and give them something they can latch onto to really believe it.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced so far in your coaching career, and like how have you overcome them?
Um, early on in my career, I was lucky to be pretty successful at quickly. And what that starts to give you is a false sense of confidence. You know, Football coaches in general, they're competitive, they're ego driven. And it took me a year um, of not doing well to have to really sit back and say, okay, maybe you're not as good as what you thought you were, and having to really self-reflect to make sure that you're doing what's best for the program and the kids. That can be difficult, especially when my first 3 years of coaching high school football, all 3 years, or I'm sorry, 3 of the first 4 years I coached football, we made the playoffs. And then the one year we didn't make it in those 4 years, we had a built-in excuse of we're just starting this place. It's a brand new program. It's going to take a little bit of time. And the next year you make the playoffs. The next year you make the playoffs, right? So now I'm 6 years into coaching football. I've made the playoffs. I'm sorry, 5 years into coaching, made the playoffs 4 times. So then the next 2 years, it's a 2-win season and another 2-win season. You kind of sit back and you're like, man, I need to really take a hard look at what's happening, with myself before I can start blaming kids. We won the COVID year, or the year before COVID, we lost. We went 2-7 when I was at Warren Woods Tower as the OC. We lost 4 games by less than or a touchdown or less. And in multiple games, our offense scored under 20 points. So you kind of sit back and say, all right, it's time for you to take a step back, check your ego a little bit, and really dive into why isn't this working, and how can you help the kids? Because if things aren't working with the kids, it's not the kids' fault; it's your fault as a coach. You have to be able to adjust to your players and who they are. So that was one of the tougher things for me to not only accept but really look back and self-evaluate that maybe I'm not the coach that I thought I was.
If your team's struggling, how long does it take like for you like how long does it take for your internal clock to go off to be like, okay, I need to shift to like just the focus of the team or like the offensive or defensive game plans you have going into the games?
I think that depends on how you're struggling. If you're losing, I tell my kids, success can't be measured by the scoreboard on Fridays. You know, you have to define success for how it fits your program. Success at Cousino isn't going to be the same success at Romeo, Chippewa, Dakota. Now, success at Cousino is going to look different than success at a place like Madison Heights, Madison, right? So you have to figure out what success is. And my thoughts are, as long as you can see growth and you can see things headed in the right direction, um, then it's not time to panic. But if you're trying to do something and your kids just don't fit what you're trying to do, um, you have to really adjust what you're trying to do. For instance, this year we went through the summer with one defense, and after the scrimmage, myself, and our D coordinator talked, and we're like, all right, this isn't working. It's not getting better. There's not much progress. We're making the same mistakes. We have to change. So that's where it really is. Like, can you see the growth towards what you consider to be success? And if you don't see that growth, it quickly needs to be addressed, because there is a point to where you can lose it. You know what I mean? You can lose control. And if you don't take a situation by situation approach, then it gets really hard to recollect those things.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say are like the main qualities that a football coach needs to be successful, either starting out or just building upon what they have already like accomplished?
Whew. I think the one quality needs to be yourself. One thing about kids is kids are very smart. They see through fake, so like I have a lot of coaching mentors in my life, but my personality is not all of those guys' personality, so I don't try to be them. I think that if you can be yourself, then players will be themselves around you, and that will open up the relationship building process, and then you can bring the best out of the kids. The other thing is, you need to be equitable, and I say that because equity and inequality are not the same. You got to understand that life is not black and white, and kids aren't black and white. And so, if you can take a situation by situation approach with kids without sacrificing your culture and your standards, um, and you can separate those things, that'll make you a great coach. And the other thing is never stop learning. You have to be eager to learn all the time. I mean, I've coached for now 9 years, and I've already started to figure out how we can fix things and what I can learn to be better. And then the last thing I guess I would tell you is whatever you think you want to coach or whatever you think you know best, go find a different position to coach. Become the most well-rounded coach you can be, and the more you know at each position, the better off you're going to be.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned? Because you mentioned you have had mentors in the sport. So what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned from those mentors?
I think you can take something different from all of them, right? Like, I go back to my first coach that, I absolutely adored as a kid. My seventh grade, he actually was my basketball coach, and then was a wrestling and track coach. And the one thing that he always did is he always made it fun. You could joke with him, but at the same time, it was never like a craziness where you run around and do whatever you want, right? He was fun. He liked to joke and have a good time, but then it was also business time, and he's a very rah-rah speech guy. We talked to this day. I taught with him, and he would tell me, like, yeah, I didn't know what the hell I was doing in basketball, but I can get you to run through a brick wall. And I was like, yeah, as I get older, I see that. You didn't know very much, but it's all right. I loved going out and playing for you, right? So just him being able to motivate people to play for him. And then, I go to Terry, the head coach at Ithaca, a big teaching mentor. I actually got to see him this weekend, and we were kind of sharing stories back and forth. So the one thing that I learned from him, and I used it this year in a game, is he always just said to never stop playing. no matter what, until the clock hits 0, don't stop playing. And this year, we played Fitzgerald. They scored 2 touchdowns in 4 minutes. We were down 14-0 week 3, and that was my message to the kids, like, hey man, just keep playing. You turn around and we won that game 33-14. So, so learning that lesson from him. And then I coached with, Al Gulick was my head coach I worked under at Warrenwood's Tower. He's still a teaching mentor to me, and he really taught me how to care deeply about your kids, right? Like, Al cared about his kids personally all the time. It would hit him hard when the kids were struggling. So he really taught me that caring about your kids as a person, not just a athlete, is super important and goes a long way. Kids love playing for Al. Then working with Scott Merchant up at Chippewa Valley, Scott's got a high standard there. They're a very successful program. So watching Scott be able to manage 76 varsity kids, and they're all individual situations, without ever sacrificing the standard he set for his program. I learned a lot. You just learn from those things to see how it's handled, see the kids' reactions to it. So those are probably my biggest football coaching mentors. And then in coaching in general, my dad still coaches. He's around. He was my coach growing up in baseball and football. He's at every football game of mine, comes to practices when he can. So, outside of the football part, him and I talk a lot about the coach part, the philosophy part, the being there for your kids part, those kind of things. So, those guys are and the best part is they're all people I can still lean on when I have questions. I was talking to Scott throughout the season about things. Gulick came to one of the games on the sideline this year, and then I got to text Terry a couple times throughout the season, just ask him for some advice. So it's always awesome to have that relationship, to be able to continue to learn from those guys.
Mm-hmm. So what is your best advice for someone that's like trying to get into the industry of coaching?
Volunteer, and there's no job too small for you, because every job that you're given will be meaningful at one point. If your goals are to become a coach down the road, for instance, I've never had to deal with equipment, but now I'm the head coach, and kids come to me like, "Can you fix my helmet?" And I'm like, "I don't have a clue how to do that." Right. So while they seem like they are insignificant and it's not the big, exciting role, coaching is a hierarchy. You got to work your way to get to those spots, and it's not a thing where you can just step in and be at the top right away. You got to earn your way through it, and you got to be okay with that. And you got to, tell yourself that there's no job too small. I can tell you that any coach would love to have a guy who you're just like, hey, can you go take care of this for me? And they don't ever have to look back and double check their work. So be someone who wants to be out there, wants to volunteer their time to do any job, and they're going to do that job to the best of their ability. And I promise you that every coach that you work for will appreciate the hell out of you.
Mm-hmm. And then what is the greatest accomplishment that you have accomplished so far in your career?
Man, there's a lot of them. I don't know how I'd rank them. Becoming a head coach was one of them. It was a dream of mine. So that accomplishment was huge to me. Coaching in the most competitive conference in the state, in the MAC Red. I coached at Chippewa Valley, and that was a huge accomplishment for me to be able to be a part of those games. And then you go in there and kind of test your knowledge and see if you belong in those atmospheres. So whether you do or don't, it's kind of nice to see. Winning a state championship is up there, right? That's the mecca. And rebuilding. This is the second program I've been a part of rebuilding, and even though I'm the head coach of this one, it doesn't feel any less important than when we rebuilt Warrenwood's Tower. We took that over, So although I'm the head coach, I'm just a part of the rebuild, and it's kind of cool to be a part of a rebuild.
Yeah. All right, so that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for doing this, and congratulations on this season, and big things are happening your way. So
I appreciate it, Calvin. Thanks for having me again, man.
I'd like to thank Coach Gennette for coming on to today's show. It was a great interview, and I learned a lot. If you're new here, catch up on all the episodes that you've missed. Make sure to leave a like and a comment. As always, my name is Calvin Custance, and this is The Blueprint.